All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today during this lunchtime hour. My name is Jessie Nixon, and I'm an Education Engagement Specialist with PBS Wisconsin Education. I'm so excited you're here today with myself and my colleague, Muna Agahethi. We're happy to present Teaching Black History with PBS Digital Resources. This winter, PBS Wisconsin Education has put together a series centered on Black excellence in education. Throughout this series, you'll have the opportunity to unearth PBS digital resources that you can use to expand Black History Month beyond February, and that's what we'll cover today. You'll have the opportunity to examine practices for creating equitable learning spaces from Black educators from across Wisconsin, the opportunity to discover new children's and young adult literature by and about people of color from 2020 and even some from 2021 to expand your classroom bookshelf. And we'll finish the series with an opportunity for you all to come together and engage in critical conversation with other peers from across the state. This 4-part series, which if you haven't already, you can sign up for any one of these opportunities by going to pbswisconsinaeducation.org/events. All of these series are put together for this winter through February and March, and anybody that attends 2 or more of these events will be able to get a lovely surprise in the mail of a PBS Wisconsin tote bag, a certificate of completion, and a letter from the head of education at PBS talking about what you were able to complete during this whole series. We're so excited to be here with you today. With that, I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Muna, to get us started.
Thank you, Jessie. Before we begin, let's briefly go over why it's important to integrate Black history into our learning environments. If you think anything is missing from this non-exhaustive list on the screen, please add your insight into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So let's start by saying Black history is a part of our shared history. Some argue that the need for calling it Black history is unnecessary because Black history is our shared history, and to treat it as anything separate is reductive. No matter which side of the coin you're on, it's integral to infuse Black history and current contributions of Black leaders into your learning spaces all year round. Imagine going into a classroom and you're only reading inspiring things about people who look like you during 1 month of the year. And it's usually the same folks each year: Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. It's almost a restrictive version of racialized education. We must do better to ensure that we are not only integrating Black history or an honest account of global history into our learning spaces, but that we're sharing a variety of Black figures and not the same ones each year. Bonus points if you include local Black heroes, which can be so much more relatable for many students. Black history focuses on the contributions of African Americans made in the past and contributions African Americans continue to make in our society today. And it's a great time to honor and celebrate these trailblazers who fought against racist institutions, demonstrating resilience, courage, and leadership against constant hatred and violence. Teaching Black history allows teachers and students alike to reckon with the spiteful history of the United States and acknowledge the way that racism has evolved and still permeates throughout our society and institutions today. Teaching Black history is of the utmost importance for the self-worth of Black and Brown students. And lastly, teaching Black history is important for the development of culturally curious and global-minded students from all backgrounds. Teaching Black history in schools helps students who have little or no interaction with African Americans to develop a more accurate understanding of African Americans in the US. And we know that's especially important in more rural places here in Wisconsin. I want to close this slide by reading the introduction from Teaching Tolerances, which is now called, Jessie, correct me, is it Learning for Justice?
Correct.
Yes. So Teaching Tolerance is now Learning for Justice, which I love. They have a learning plan collection called Teaching Beyond Slavery, and they introduced it by saying the following, quote, Black History Month should serve as an exhilarating time to fill in the gaps left by textbooks and curriculum standards. It should also inspire teachers to continue this education beyond February, teaching Black and non-Black students how they can affirm the existence and humanity of Black lives year-round. It's okay to teach about the resilience of Black people despite the structures in place to uphold a racial hierarchy. We already know, for example, the more work is needed to help students learn the history of American slavery and the civil rights movement accurately. But it's also critical that teachers show that the people of African descent have contributed more than forced free labor to US history. Students deserve opportunities to examine Black literature, art, innovations, and customs that have helped shape the culture of the United States and the world. End quote. I encourage you to reflect on this list more and add to it when you have a moment after this webinar today. How would you add to this list further, and how would you localize it to meet the needs of your own learning space? Next slide, please. Thank you. So now that we've covered some of the reasons that Black history is so important, we wanted to touch on a quick language note before we dive into our breakout rooms. So there are sometimes educators who are confused about whether or not they should use the term Black or whether they should use the word African American, and both terms are perfectly fine to use. It's important to note that with historically excluded groups in the US, they are given hyphen American names, Asian American, African American, Native American, but we don't say white American. And even saying white American would make a lot of white people uncomfortable. So I encourage you, in a sense, to decolonize your language and be as equitable as you can when you speak, because language really matters. Keith Mays, an associate professor of African American and African Studies at the University of Minnesota, says that the words African American and Black can be used interchangeably. He added, some people believe that African American is too limiting for the current population. So the easiest way to understand this is that those who are descendants of enslaved people are referred to as African American. And in the US, we have so many more groups of Black people here from other parts of the diaspora and other parts of the continent, such as East Africans, West Africans, Caribbean Black people. And so those are ways to kind of help distinguish it. If you feel uncomfortable saying the word Black, there's also some unpacking and reflecting that might be helpful there for yourself. Whichever term you do use, avoid using the word Blacks with a plural at the end if you can, because it can be interpreted negatively by your Black students. In being mindful of our language, I also encourage you to use the word enslaved person or enslaved instead of the word slave. It changes our understanding of who a person was to what was happening and being forced on them. Slave can be seen as a needlessly dehumanizing word. The men and women described were humans first, and using the term enslaved helps restore an identity to them rather than using a non-human noun. So with that being said, let's dive into our breakout rooms.
Thanks, Muna. So today we have 2 breakout rooms. The plan is that then you will be able to go into the breakout room for the grade level that you teach the most. If you teach all grade levels, we'll be happy to share this video and the slides in our post-event email. So to choose what breakout room you'd like to go to, you should find on your Zoom somewhere a little box, little 4 boxes that says breakout rooms, and you should be able to choose your own room that you'd like to attend today. The first room is pre-K through 3rd, and the second room 4th through 12th. If you have any difficulties choosing your breakout room, our colleague Jen will stay in this main room to help make sure that you get to the room that you'd like to be in.
All right, let's get started. Welcome to our early learning resource dive. During the next 15 or so minutes, I'm going to dive into some resources that you can pull into your learning environments any time of the year in an effort to celebrate and acknowledge Black history and Black contributions all year round. So you're going to see a lot of slides that I made, and then I'm also going to be clicking on links that will take us out to kind of show you what things look like. And like I mentioned before, this is being recorded, and you will also be sent this slide deck. So you're going to have access to all of these links for you to use later on for yourself. So why are you sitting in on a PBS Kids webinar talking about history or classroom education? The short answer is that PBS Kids is one of the most trusted, sought after, and free educational media for kids. Part of what makes PBS Kids so unique is that there are curriculum advisors brought onto advisory councils for shows, meaning that learning goals are embedded into those fun cartoons that your young students love to watch. Let's take a peek at what some of those themes are. So here you can see some of the different shows and some of the different learning goals that they align with. So shows such as Daniel Tigers and Sesame Street align a lot with social and emotional learning. So what that means is that in these episodes, you would find a lot of themes that relate to developing social emotional learning skills for children. Shows that are great for literacy would be Martha Speaks, Molly of Denali, social studies, the arts, and more. You'll see Let's Go Luna. Another one that would be added here once this is updated would be Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum, because that's another really great one that we're going to hear about in a bit for learning about social studies. And then we have a ton of resources for STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. So I just wanted to show you this because a lot of, oh, actually Xavier Riddle is also right here. So it's also a part for social and emotional learning. So I just wanted to show you this to give you guys a better understanding of PBS Kids is so much more than just fun colors on a screen. It's really intentional educational media that is good for the whole family. All right, let's see here. One of the ways that you can easily sort through the abundance of PBS Kids media is by using a resource called PBS Learning Media. I call this website the ultimate Google for educators. You can easily find free, standards-aligned resources that are easily searchable by grade level, content area, or topic. So let's take a look together. So this is the homepage of PBS Learning Media. Here is the search bar, which is where you would search any topic that you're looking for. I highly recommend creating an account. It's free. The benefit of having an account is that you can easily sync things to your Google Classroom, and you can also favorite things and even build lessons on PBS Learning Media. So for the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to type in Black History Month, and we'll see what resources come up. So there are 7,871 resources, but that's grades pre-K through adult learning. So over here on the left, there is a filter system. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller just for pre-K through second grade. And one of the resources that I want to highlight with you all today is learning about Black leaders bingo, pre-K and K. And then there's also one for grades 1 and 2. They're very similar. The ones for grade 1 and 2 just have a little bit more writing prompts. So let's take a look at what this looks like. This is a great example of a resource on PBS Learning Media. You can see over here on the left is where if you have an account, you're able to favorite it. You can share it to your Google Classroom, or you can even assign it or share it to students. You can do it via text, via the app Remind, via Facebook, and you can also share it with students. And there's a student version of PBS Learning Media as well. So here's where you'd be able to download some of the resources. You can see over here, this bottom panel just kind of shows you what to expect in that PDF. There is a description of these bilingual weekly learn-along bingo cards, which include a range of thematic learning opportunities for children to choose their own learning adventure. It's in English and Spanish, and you'll also notice over here on the right, it says support materials for use for students, and there's a family letter that you can hand out in both English and Spanish. So let's take a peek at what this bingo packet looks like. And the cool thing is this printable is ready to go. It is ready for you to print out and send to your students. So learning about Black leaders bingo. Here's that family letter. And here is the main bingo card. I love some of the examples on here. Create a step dance routine using steps like front, back, fast, and slow. Make a trombone from recyclable materials. Practice playing like the jazz musician, trombone shorty. Doing a coloring sheet of George Washington Carter. So we'll go down here. These are some characters from Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum. And this is a really cool way for students to connect the characters with what they are known for. And then just some different assignments. So this one talks about how Garrett Morgan, who designed the 3-color traffic signal, it has them just color in some sheets and learn about him. This one's about George Washington Carver. This printable talks about Misty Copeland, who was the first Black principal ballerina with the American Ballet Theater, and it's another coloring opportunity for children. And then attached at the bottom is also the broadcast schedule for PBS Kids, so that families can try to, line up some shows with their children. So This is just a great example of a resource that is ready to go that you can all use. And one thing that I did is I included it on the slide deck so that when you are looking at this later, you don't even have to search for it in PBS Learning Media. You'll have access to it here. But I really wanted you guys to see what PBS Learning Media looks like so that for any topics, whether it's insects or plants, whatever it is, you're able to go there and explore and find some classroom ready, high quality, standardized resources. So the next resource that I want to highlight is the PBS Kids Talk About Race and Racism special that aired a little bit of time ago. As I mentioned earlier, Black history is a part of our shared American history. And instead of shying away from hard truths, parents and educators can explain that a long time ago, people were separated by the color of their skin. Some people did not think that was fair, and men and women of all races united to make a change. This is a very straightforward example that teaches empathy, cooperation, and commonality of a shared goal. And it is also a way to teach children how to connect their own personal experiences with the larger world. So many early childhood educators don't know the place of race in the classroom, and alarmingly, some may even think that young children don't notice racial differences, which we all know not to be true. If anyone wants specific resources about that, I'd be happy to share, but I won't go into that too much because that's an entire webinar for another day. So this specific special is a half-hour long, and it has authentic conversations between real children and their parents, and it also includes PBS clips from shows like Arthur and Daniel Tiger. The show features kids and their parents talking about race and racial justice related topics in an age-appropriate way, such as noticing differences in race, understanding what racism can look like, and embracing the role we all have to play in standing up for ourselves and each other, offering viewers ideas to build on as they continue these important conversations at home. And another part of the series that I wanted to highlight is the poem by the youngest inaugural National Youth Poet Laureate, Amanda Gorman, whom many of us recognize from the news in the last few weeks. So we can take a look at this poem, which I think is only a minute long, and think about the way that you might be able to bring this into your classroom. One way to do so is by sharing this with your kids and talking about celebrating differences and speaking out about racism today and every day. So let's listen to that poem.
Writing poetry is my favorite way to use my own voice. This is a poem I wrote called Talking Gets Us There. It's normal to notice what makes us different, because what makes us different is what makes each of us so special. There's beauty in every type of face and in every type of freckle, from the curl of your hair to the color of your skin. No one is exactly the same, not even twins. But across time and place, people have been treated unfairly just because of their race. So heroes get into good trouble. They have to struggle for a long while, but when they win, it's worth every mile. People of color still experience racism today. So it's up to all of us to say enough is enough, to speak out with all our hearts. That starts at home. It starts with asking questions about race, and then we're talking about it together. I know we can tackle racism. But first, we have to talk about it.
All right. So about 2 more resources to share with you today, and then we'll get into the questions section. This other resource is that is ready for your classrooms is Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum's Hero Maker game. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Xavier Riddle, he loves to learn about heroes from the past, and this show allows young learners to celebrate and learn about history in a very age-appropriate way. In the Xavier Riddle Hero Maker game, we celebrate the Black heroes in the month of February and all year long. Students can create their own hero and learn more about Maya Angelou, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, and more. I also hyperlinked here one of Xavier Riddle's episodes about Maya Angelou and Frederick Douglass in case you want to share that with your students. And if we had more time today, I'd play a clip, but we don't. But I have both the Hero Maker game, which you can kind of see screen grabs up over here, where students can create their own Black hero based on maybe somebody that they're learning about in class. And then also the clip of the show, Xavier Riddle, that talks about Maya Angelou and Frederick Douglass. So those are both available for you to explore after our time together today. The last resource that I'm going to point out today is called Wisconsin Biographies. This is similar to Xavier Riddle in the sense of honoring historic heroes, but this is more so meant for those upper elementary grades. Wisconsin Biographies is homemade right here in Wisconsin by our PBS Wisconsin education team. And, excuse me, it is a collection of free educational online media resources to enrich your social studies and literacy curriculum using the stories of notable people here in Wisconsin history. Using these resources for each story, students will be able to describe who is this person, what did they do, why are they considered important, how did they change the lives of people past and present, and what impact will their actions have on future generations. So I'm going to click on the website here just so that you guys can all take a glance at what this looks like. This is the Vel Phillips and James Gropey page. And the really cool thing about this is not only is there a cartoon or an animated style video that describes the work that they've done, but there are 3 different leveled e-readers that explain their lives. And the fun kind of interactive part is that students can create an idea map based on what they've learned, or they can design their own trading card. So for those younger kiddos, there's the Xavier Riddle, they can make their own hero. This one, those older students can design a trading card and kind of input more text and whatnot. So let's see. I stole these questions from a PBS Kids blog about the importance of teaching Black history to early learners and thought these were just some great questions to either bring into your classroom or encourage caregivers to have with their children. So you can feel free to take a screen grab or jot any of these down if they resonate with you in your upcoming lessons. And another reminder, it'll be included in the slide deck, so no need to rush anything. But these questions are, what makes someone a hero? Who are some Black heroes that you have learned about? What is a role model? What Black role models help to make the world a better place? How have Black people helped our country or your community? So just some good questions to reflect on. And in closing, I'd like to share some additional ideas for teaching young learners about Black history. One of the greatest ways to do this, as we all know, is through reading and is through books. And so some examples for that is to buy a book by a Black author illustrator and make it a part of your child's permanent collection. So books offer a fun and easy way to introduce your children to new cultures and to help them explore the experiences of people from different backgrounds. Look for books that are inclusive and reflect the diversity of community. I have been in so many early elementary classrooms where the only books that have Black characters are talking about sports or are talking about, Martin Luther King Jr. And I encourage you to look for ones where we're not talking about extraordinary Black heroes, but just having regular Black characters in those stories is so important. When and if children ask about race, don't sweep differences under the rug. Give children simple, concrete explanations when they have questions. Select books that affirm a valued place for all children. Try to find books that help prepare children for the complex world in which we live in. And lastly, make sure your selections include contemporary stories. Celebrate Black culture and experiences in addition to history through picture books, chapter books, and poetry. And I highly recommend you register for our upcoming webinar on diversifying your classroom bookshelves. We'd love to have you. So let's see here. So really quickly, there is a QR code on this slide. If you were to pull up your phone, I can also drop the link in the chat. But what this does is that if you attend 2 or more of our events, you're going to be sent basically a free swag bag. So if you take this QR code, it asks you 2 questions, your name and your email, that's it. And that's just a way for us to confirm your attendance to events. So if you're interested in that, please take the 30 seconds or a minute to fill that out. And I will also, let me grab that link for you and put it in the chat box in case you don't have a phone to open up that QR code.
This section will cover grades 4 through 12, recognizing that that's quite a vast amount of grade levels. I'll try to give you a little bit of resources that could be used in any of those grade levels. I'd like to start by telling you about This is actually PBS Wisconsin creation called Wisconsin Biographies. As it sounds like, Wisconsin Biographies, it features famous Wisconsinites from across the state, tells their story. And what this allows students to do, this is grades 3rd through 5th, we suggest for Wisconsin Biographies, students get a biography of the individual and can answer questions such as, who is this person? What did they do? Why are they important? How did they change the lives of people both in the past and in the present? And then what impact will their actions have on those future generations? I'm going to bring you to Wisconsin Biographies to show you 2 stories that are particularly helpful for Black History Month or integrating Black history into your whole year. The first is the story of Joshua Glover. Each Wisconsin biography has an animated video, a corresponding biography, as well as some activities and an image gallery. I'm going to show you just about 30 seconds of the Joshua Glover video so you can see the kind of animation that students can watch.
Oh, brother man, full to thy heart, thy brother, where pity dwells, the peace of God is there. To worship rightly is to love each other. Each smile a hymn, each kindly deed a prayer.
Joshua Glover's story, if you're not familiar with it, he escaped to Wisconsin, and then the fugitive slave laws were enacted, making it illegal for people in Wisconsin to allow Joshua Glover to stay. But abolitionists in Wisconsin helped him escape to Canada out of Beloit, up the Great Lakes, and into freedom. The reader itself includes a more detailed biography. So the Joshua Glover video itself actually doesn't have a narration over it, but it includes images, vocabulary words that are all bolded with definitions in the back. Another story that might be of interest to you, you might be familiar with, is the story of Val Phillips. And I'll show this animation because each one of them is really very different.
In the 1960s, Milwaukee was divided. The Black community lived in the north, the white in the south. The 16th Street Viaduct was the bridge that connected the 2 communities, but more than just a river separated them. Things were getting tense. The inner core was falling apart, and families were left with few options. The Black community was hurting. Something had to give. 2 people bravely stepped up to lead the way. Val Phillips and Father James Groffey were an unlikely pair of heroes. Val's story is a tale of firsts.
And so you can imagine students can explore all these videos. The reader, this particular reader has 3 levels. So level 1, level 2, level 3. So students can all read the same biography at their different reading levels. The next couple resources that I'd like to tell you about all come from PBS Learning Media. If you're not familiar with PBS Learning Media, it is a collection of resources that are free, standards aligned to whatever state you live in. They're easily searchable by grade level, content, topic. There are thousands of videos, interactives, lesson plans, discussion questions, and all of the content is easily integrated into Google Classroom. The resources I'll show you today will take us to PBS Learning Media, where you can see what that looks like in practice. The first collection I'd like to tell you about is called Confronting Anti-Black Racism. This is a collection for grades 6 through 13, collecting 26 videos, a media gallery, and lesson plans. And I'll show you what it looks like. So this is PBS Learning Media. This particular, you can see that there are videos. Some of them are from the news, from the PBS NewsHour. Some cover the topic of Black Lives Matter movement, so they're really recent videos, police and criminal justice reform, the topic of race and racism. So this media gallery, for example, has a video, historical documents, images that all ask the question about what is race and help students think about that topic. There are always also opportunities for students to hear from other students across the country on the same topic. Another series that I really enjoy is a series called Unladylike. Unladylike tells the history of 26 women from the progressive era that are diverse in profession, race, ethnicity, class, sexual orientation, who broke barriers in the then male-dominated fields. One of those stories is Bessie Coleman. I'll show you just a little bit about Bessie's story so you can see also the beautiful imagery in these videos.
Dream was to become a pilot, but her real ambition was to open up a flying school so that other Blacks would be a part of this new industry. Say I don't act right, it's only like how I wanna live my life. 1919, Chicago, Illinois. 27-year-old Bessie Coleman worked as a manicurist in a barbershop. She was inspired by the story of Harriet Quimby, the first woman to earn a pilot's license in the U.S. Then Coleman overheard customers talking about European women who served as combat pilots during World War I.
I thought, that's it, I'm gonna be a pilot. And everybody started laughing at me. Girl, sit down and grab that nail file. You ain't flying no plane.
The aviation industry back at that time, it was a white man's world. It was hard enough for white women. For a Black woman, it was nearly insane to choose.
So all these stories for Unladylike also are accompanied by discussion questions. So you can see here a number of comprehension questions, critical thinking questions. There's an activity. So students could watch the video and do any one of these activities, as well as additional readings about that particular topic. There are handouts. I think these are really neat. They actually put them into Microsoft Word documents, and they're newspaper clippings about Bessie Coleman, as well as spots for students to write in the answer. So you could imagine using this in your classroom right away. If you like Bessie Coleman's story, there are 3 additional stories that you might be interested in for Black History Month. And I've listed them here, and they'll be in that, that email after the event. Civil Rights Then and Now is a unique collection that has 84 documents, grades 3 through 13, a number of documents, interactives, and lesson plans. What I really love about this series is this concept of then and now, and showing how the same topics or themes, how people have thought about them and talked about them in the past, and then talk about them today. You can see here, for example, is the topic of segregation, and it goes over both, there are 19 videos on this particular topic that cover the vast span of our country's history. Seeking justice then and now, taking action then and now. So one of these talks about what that might have looked like in the past, what protesting looked like in the past, what it looked like today. Speaking out, combating poverty then and now, and thinking about voting rights then and now. So again, all of these, there are videos, as well as activities and lesson plans that you can use for any of these series. One more collection that should be of interest is the Reconstruction America After the Civil War. Again, it has a variety of videos, lesson plans, activities. And these clips were taken from the Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s documentary series, Reconstruction America After the Civil War, but it's broken them down into short little 4 to 5 minute clips, recognizing that in the classroom, probably you don't have a time to show a whole documentary, but you can look at one topic piece by piece. So I'll show you just a little bit of this so you can see some of the activities that go along with this.
In November of 1865, the government that Andrew Johnson had set up in Mississippi passed a set of oppressive laws that applied only to African Americans. Soon, Other southern states followed suit. These laws became known as the Black Codes.
So a 4-minute video, if you look over to the side, you'll see a variety of activities. So this one includes some questions, a link to the National Archives website where they're going to get more information, additional questions, and all of these can be integrated into PBS Learning Media itself. So all of these resources are free for everyone. You don't have to log into anything. But if you want to start, say, favoriting videos so that you don't lose them, if you're like me, I have about 50 tabs open and I always lose track of things, you can sign in again for free and create your own page. And I'll show you what that looks like just really quickly. You can import a class from your Google Classroom right into PBS Learning Media. You can create assignments. Let's say you wanted to have them watch that Bessie Coleman video and maybe do one of the activities. All this can be integrated right there into PBS Learning Media to assign for your students. The last thing I'd like to tell you about today, if you don't know already, there's a Black History Education Conference participating in Madison, Wisconsin, but also it's virtual. So it's available to everybody no matter where you are. And that is February 19th through 20th. My colleague Muna will be there presenting, and we're sponsoring this conference and the important work that they're doing there today.